Hey kids, it's Red again with another interview. I'm here with John Crowder from Utilitarian. Thank you for joining me today, John.
Yep, no problem. Hey.
Good. All right, so let's just get right into it because we don't have a lot of time here. So just real quick. So I'm sure you already took a look at the questions. So I think you already know what you want to say for some of these. So how did you decide on the name Utilitarian? And would you say that the name Utilitarian goes along with the political themes that you cover in your music?
Uh, not really. Utilitarian is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek name, if I'm honest, and it mostly comes from the Napalm Death album, Utilitarian,
No. Okay.
right? Which is both a great grindcore album,
Yeah.
and pretty influential on us as well as Napalm Death's politics. But John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism is a lot more brutal than I think the politics that we would have, right? It's one of the core tenets of utilitarianism under John Stuart Mill would be that it would be acceptable to let 100 people die to save 200 people, right? That's the kind of philosophy behind it, and it's kind of put into that, but it's not. It's probably not a direct reflection of our politics so much as when Napalm Death used the term utilitarian, they used it in not reference it to John Stuart Mill, but to describe their style of music, which is functional but not pretty,
Right.
right? And so we use it in a similar vein.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this too much of a philosophical discussion here, but utilitarianism is one of the. It's like I think it gets criticism a lot for being more cold and calculated compared to like other ethical schools. Like another ethical school you can look at, like fucking look at me, I sound like a goddamn university professor, but ethical school that people go towards is more altruism, where you focus on the interests of everyone and not just the interest of just a small group of people for the just to counteract the negative impacts of that. But I guess we don't.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go on.
I've seen the impacts of things like there's a real difficulty I think as well, which is that in the core tenets of those philosophies, in the books in which they're proposed, it's quite a controlled environment through which to analyse how philosophy is used in practice. However, when you see when that actually hits the real world, it changes shape and it takes different forms. So, for example, what some people understand as altruism and the way that it's used by philosophical schools such as, I don't know, effective altruism are completely fucking different, right? Like, yeah. So I've got, there is real problems in I guess ascribing directly to a school without really explaining what you mean by it, because and that's kind of what we get into a lot in our music as well. We are very forward about saying what we mean and what we want. We're not hiding behind any sort of deeper meaning. We're not deep in metaphor at all. We're very blunt when we say, this is what we think should happen. This is how society should be structured. This is how this is how people should be taken care of. This should be the most important thing, in a human life. That kind of thing. We are very direct when we say that stuff, rather than sort of putting it behind any sort of metaphor or leaving a lot of it open to interpretation. I'd say a lot of the utilitarian lyrics are not really that open to interpretation. They're so direct.
Very blunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can still be relatively eloquent in the way we put them over, but we want to be really, really clear what we mean.
Yeah.
We want to leave absolutely no room for interpretation other than what we were trying to get across.
I think
the difference between us and say, like,
Go on.
Megadeth.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, Dave Mustaine writes the way Dave Mustaine writes lyrics, you would think he's like a socialist and pro like human rights and things like that. But actually, when you find out about his politics, you find out he's not that guy. And so you're like, well, what the fuck were you talking about when you wrote "Peace Sells," brother? Like,
Well, that was back in the
like
'80s when he was young and he didn't become super rich and jaded from everything. So.
Sure, yeah. But I don't want us to be open to that same interpretation. Where I want people to know exactly what we're about when we write songs.
Yeah, I think you do a great job of that if you just read the lyrics. All right.
Yeah, we tried to be super clear.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's actually kind of move on. So you mentioned, being influenced by that Napalm Death. So how would you describe your genre of metal? It seems to be like a mixture, a fusion of extreme metal and crossover thrash. So was this sort of style of music was intentional, so it can reflect and fit with the aesthetic of the music that you have and topics that you wanted to cover?
It kind of is. In some sense. I mean, we set out the local scene where Amara and I grew up. We've been in bands before in this area. Tends to have a lot of representation in specific genres.
Mm-hmm.
Black metal has a very strong, I guess, presence in the music scene that we're from. We're not particularly influenced by that, I don't think, but those genres have always been really prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
They've always been, if you want to sound like this, you do this. These are the rules you follow. That's kind of how you do it.
Yeah.
And as artists, we always found that remarkably restrictive, because there was a lot of stuff we wanted to do where we're like, I have a feeling I want to evoke with this, and I don't really not precious about how we get there and what we do with that. We had a lot of artists we were drawing like particular inspiration from. Napalm Death is one of them, but there's plenty of other stuff in there. I think with the social politics that we have, a lot of that energy comes from not just from grindcore, which obviously has, particularly British grindcore, has a lot of that left-wing through line in it. So Napalm Death are obviously a big one, but then you've got a whole host of other bands. Bolt Thrower are also in there. You've got Extreme Noise Terror. You've got a whole bunch of other stuff. They all come from a school that's older than that, which is anarcho-punk.
Yeah, I've listened to a little bit of that.
Bands like Crass and things like that, and that was a real underground scene at its time. Yeah. So they were like putting on gigs in scout huts and doing things like that, where no promoter, because you can't make money from this, right? That's the thing. It's not a profit making enterprise, and it never will be, because usually that kind of politics and that good thing is never going to be that, because it just doesn't align with interests of capital.
Yeah.
And so they still had this sort of art that they wanted to put in the world that was inside them, and they wanted to get it out, and so they were doing that at any social space that would allow it, and that was scout huts and village halls and all that sort of stuff. And so you have these sort of cute British towns with like cute town halls with some of the most violent and provocative and I guess like counter narrative type music happening in them, right, which is really, really cool. That created that world of grindcore and death metal to some extent.
Yeah.
From that. And so there's a bit of that in us as well, and then there's a bit of the sort of, even a bit of the, what I would call like the positive hardcore scene as well, right? So like there's plenty there, but like there's even a bit of things like Hatebreed and stuff like that in there, and some of their contemporaries and like stuff like that, because we have broad tastes, and to us, I guess it fits the utilitarian sound as long as it's pretty heavy and we're doing it, and that's good enough.
Yeah. I mean, like, all music is, well, not, I wouldn't say all music. I mean, I do kind of, I'm going to ask this later, but all music is sort of like a product of, like, its time, like the 80s, all the extreme metal happened because, like, the political shifts in the US and the UK at the time and other countries. So, I mean, that's why, you had punk, and then you had thrash metal, which led to death metal and black metal. And actually, just real quick, I'm surprised you said you're not really influenced by black metal, because I checked on the metal archives. Amara, a.k.a. Lorgar, apparently used to play in a lot of black metal bands. Is that correct, or was
still does, actually, still plays in Fornius and a few others, but that influence, I don't hear that in our sound.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of the stuff we do in Utilitarian is she's got an outlet for those things already, and this is like everything I want to do that doesn't fit that rule set can't exist in those bands, right? And so Utilitarian is a great place for it to happen.
So, like, did you know each other before you found... Oh, sorry, there's some construction going on. So, like, did you know each other before you formed Utilitarian, or like you found each other and then like you formed Utilitarian because you wanted like an outlet to,
Yeah, we've known each other for ages. We've been in a band together before. We were in a doom metal band called Petrichor together.
Yeah.
That is a project that we worked together in the past on, and so we've worked together before that. Been sort of tangentially aware of some of the other projects that she's worked on as well in the past. Working together in Petrichor. Petrichor went on hiatus in 2019. And during the pandemic and the shutdown that happened around that time, we started writing utilitarian stuff, and it came from a want to do, initially almost a want to do D-beat kind of stuff, but there is kind of I think there's like a political background that sort of can't be ignored as well, which is that in 2020, 2019 in Britain, you have quite a generational, two generational election things happening, right? So you're a few years gone from the Brexit vote, which was enormously divisive in the UK.
Yeah.
Like votes along the lines of 52 to 48%, right? It's like very super close. And so that's polarizing as it is. And then also that echoes from then to now and beyond in, you can pretty much, if someone voted a certain way in that election, you can infer a lot about the politics they're likely to have, and vice versa. So that was divisive. And then in we had a candidate at the time for leading the, at that time, the Labour Party in the UK was a centre-left party, and was being led by a guy called Jeremy Corbyn,
Yes.
and he was part of that candidacy. There's a lot of hope behind Jeremy Corbyn that he could kind of be the lever to overturn a decade or more of austerity that had been happening in the UK and like crumbling public services, that kind of thing. And he lost that election in 2019, and it was a real ugly, naked, radicalising moment for a bunch of people in the UK. I would
They lost
say,
the Labour Party lost like 60 seats, didn't they? At least.
I think so. Yeah, they had a few seats lost. The vote was enormous as well, but it was like you kind of in the way that the electoral law in the UK works is during the actual period of the election, there are rules on what media journals can publish. Basically, they can't come out in favour of one or another, particularly vocally and all that sort of stuff. Designed to keep it fair. We can argue all day about how whether it does or not. But in, I would say, the year or two before that period begun, you were reading insane things
Like what?
about the centre-left candidate in the media.
Like he was an anti-Semite.
And yeah, that was one big story that was used as a lever against him. Like, that was one of the big ones. But it's even crazy shit as well. It's always like the BBC actually doctored a photo of him for one of the Newsnight programs to put a Russian Ushanka hat on him. It was getting really silly, right? Like, it was getting really strange. And for a lot of people in Britain, that was a radicalising moment because you'd kind of never seen it that naked before, right? You'd kind of never experienced that level of partisanship, I would say, in your media. That was the kind of stuff that we heard about, like happening in Fox, right, and CBS. We'd be like,
we see that shit all the time.
Yeah, we'd be like, this looks like American media to us, but it's here in the UK, and that was a real radicalising moment. Corbyn lost that election, and with him went pretty much any electoral hope of a left-wing government.
And now you have Keir Starmer.
And then you have 2020, and you have a Boris Johnson government managing and handling the pandemic. And you also, and watching that unfold is pretty grim. There was an enormous amount of corruption during that particular run as well, under Boris Johnson. things like COVID loan forgiveness, which was crazy, and then that being used as a lever for more austerity, right?
Yeah.
We can't fund healthcare because we spent so much money on COVID loans. We're really sorry, but who asked you to do that, right?
Well, they
You
said
gave
that
money to...
they said if you leave the EU, all the money you give to the EU will be spent on the NHS, right?
Yeah, and like this becomes a factor of British life, right? Where you're just used to hearing
Bullshit.
yeah, you used to be lied to, and then also you're enduring. If you remember what someone promised and then ask them why they haven't done it, everyone's mad at you for some reason, right? But the only curse is remembering. Right? So like, you end up as a bit of a pariah in British politics, where you're like, yeah, why is it suddenly a bad thing to aim for low class sizes, right? Why is it suddenly a bad thing that people should get free childcare if you want people in work, right? Free childcare is a good way to do that. Why is it suddenly a bad thing that that you should put controls on things like rent, which are getting out of control for people, or controls on things like energy prices, which have gone up 300% in the last year? Like, it's this was quite boring politics about 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is all like,
but all the boring stuff is
tame.
actually important, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, for sure. But like, this wasn't culture war. This would have been normal stuff. But anyway, that was a radicalizing moment, and with that radicalizing moment came the movement against it, and then the counter movement against the movement.
Yeah.
So other stuff was happening globally. The murder of George Floyd in the United States was a big international moment, I would say, for a lot of people, because it laid bare like a lot of the attitude that law enforcement has towards non-white people.
Yeah.
Right, and so that was a radicalizing moment. There were plenty of other things. I think the Me Too movement happened like shortly before the pandemic rather than during it, but like that sort of stuff was happening. So there was a women's rights aspect happening as well, and it felt like a lot of social grassroots things were happening. And then a lot of people who don't like that stuff had a culture war lashback.
Well, they want to make it as part of their identity, so then it's like, so it's tribalistic bullshit that takes over.
And then then what happens when that happens is we saw that in our music, in our music sectors as well, right?
Yeah.
Artists were coming out with super tame,
bland, boring, innocuous.
Well, there are takes that I think that are really tame. Like, an artist who's relatively famous will be like, I don't think that women should like have to carry a baby to term if they don't want it. Right? Super normal opinion to have. Right? Incredibly normal. And then you would have chuds online being like, keep the politics out of it, brother. Right? And you'd be like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like, are we supposed to pretend that people exist in a vacuum? Right, it's crazy, and it almost become a rallying cry that like it shouldn't be about politics, and so Utilitarian was a real like fork in the ground moment for us, which was, no, it is about politics. Everything we do is about politics. You cannot separate us from what we want to talk about.
Well, that actually does make
and
me
this is
actually does make me want to ask: do you think all art is inherently political?
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate?
Intentionally so or not, right?
Yeah. Because I want to hear your take on that. Because I don't really have a strong opinion on that, but I like to hear someone who does, though.
I think you cannot, not just all art, I think you cannot separate anything from politics. I think politics has an incredibly broad definition, and I want to distance. I would say it's important to like unpeg politics as a thing done by politicians. I think that is a good way to look at it. I think when a group of people get together and decide how they want to live, what they want to do, how things should be, that is politics. When a group of people at a bus stop complain about how much the buses cost, that is political. When when a great example, right? If you want to understand why Hawaiian food has spam in it, it's political. Brother, like it's the history of that is political. It's that the Hawaiian people had U.S. troops living there, couldn't get food but could get U.S. rations, and that U.S. rations had spam in it. So now it's part of their culture.
It's culture.
So like, it's so inherently tied into what people want, people talk about, that you can't. There is no such thing as an apolitical statement, I don't think. Right? I think it's really hard to make an apolitical statement. Even when you see an exercise in trying to do stuff apolitically, it becomes a political statement. It unintentionally. And what I mean by that is the last Call of Duty game.
Oh yeah,
Is a
I haven't played it,
place,
but I heard it was not that great.
Takes place in the future with a fictional agency fighting a war in a fictional country against a fictional enemy, right? They're literally pulling every punch possible because they're like, we don't want this to be a political statement. This is an apolitical statement.
But it ends up being one anyway.
We want to create the world's first apolitical shooter, right? It's a political statement because of that. Because what they've actually said is that it feels so risky for them to do that whilst existing within a market at the moment and trying to sell a game and spend the most money ever on the game and get people to buy it and play it, that they've had to pull every punch possible just so they don't risk upsetting power and upset people wading into a culture war.
Well, I don't think that's possible to do these days. Even if you're as safe as possible, you're probably going to piss someone off no matter what you do.
Completely. People get annoyed at you for being safe.
Or your complexion. Yeah. I mean, have you...
People,
yeah.
I don't want to... People be like, oh, they've not made a statement on this yet.
They want you to say something, right? even if you don't have any interest, even if you do have an opinion, you don't want to say anything about it. Someone will always pressure you into saying, "What's your opinion on X?" Even though you're not a political figure or anything like that.
I always think my reaction to that is always going to be, it's actually pretty good. I think it's actually pretty good to have a stance on things, even if your stance is, I don't know enough. Right? Like, if you were to ask me, I don't know, there's a developing situation in the country I don't know about. I can't give you an opinion on it. I'm so sorry. Because, I'd love to know more and I'd love to then form an opinion. But for me to suddenly know that this is right and that's wrong, I can't do that without knowing more.
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly valid opinion to have.
Yeah. I wish the average, person had that mindset. I think the world would look very different if people actually learned about issues before they actually took action on them. But, that's a whole other rant I don't want to get into right now, I
think it's okay having values as well, right? I don't think we need to, infer values from people's positions on things. I think that's backwards, actually. But it's perfectly okay for someone to be like, I don't know enough about that conflict, but I don't think that X people deserve to die, or that should happen, or that this should be the result of that, or whatever, or that we should be, I think that's okay, because if your values are that, pacifism generally, then it's okay to believe that war is
bad,
bad, and also not inevitable, and also there are always ways around it, and you shouldn't be forced into a dichotomy just because something has happened between two parties who believe that war is inevitable. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there is a heuristic, you could subscribe to the heuristic that war is bad and 99.9% of the time you'd be right anyway, or something like that.
Yeah. For sure. And I think it's okay to have those values and those principles. I think it's good. And I think it's really important to wear those values on your sleeve somewhat as well. And I think a lot of utilitarians' music takes that stance, right? We have our first and I think our only T-shirt starts with the line every human being deserves dignity, right? And that is a value that we have.
Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, I don't want to rush you, but let's move on here now. So let's just on that note, so we already kind of touched what the biggest bands and influences are. So what in terms of music style and themes, what do you think have been big influence? I'm sure a lot of those grindcore bands, you mentioned Napalm Death, have been influenced. But is there also an imagery you have in mind with the band, or do you just want to let the music sort of speak for itself?
We this is a really dumb guy answer, but anything we think is cool at the time is likely to make it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
We don't throw a lot of stuff out where we're like, we can't do that because, it doesn't fit with this. We don't throw a lot of stuff out like that. We might be like, oh, that's an idea for a different song, but like we aren't often just leaving stuff on a cutting room floor because it doesn't fit with the vibe.
Yeah.
We think you can be
Salvage
you
somehow.
can contain more shits.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you don't like every idea can have some potential value. You don't want to like immediately discard it just because it intuitively does not seem like it would fit. Is that kind of what you're going for?
Yeah, for sure. And like yeah, exactly. And there's stuff that like quite often it'll be a case of like me and Amara will be messaging and one of us will be like, I had an idea for this and I really want to do something that has, for example, I want to do something that has these sort of big on the thrack like digital dub drops in it that sound horrible through like a subwoofer, like that kind of stuff.
Try at least.
And it's cool, right? Like, and that's and we'll find a place for that, or like someone will be like, oh, just recently I've been listening to a load of like old Sepultura, and it's got that sort of real rhythmic vibe behind it, and I kind of want to do more with that, right? And it can be that simple. It can be that. There's very little that comes to the table where we're like, no, we can't do that because it's not us.
Yeah, totally. All right. So like any bands in particular I mean we talked a little bit about punk, but like any bands that like you found you appreciate like the more like the left wing aesthetic and like the political aesthetic and like whose themes you try not necessarily try to emulate but used as a sort of inspiration for your own band as far as Utilitarian is concerned anyway.
We love a few. Bolt Thrower are fantastic. I think they're really good. Napalm Death, obviously, enormous. I've got nothing but love for Napalm Death in both the music and I love the attitude because I love that at the time in the 80s when they were doing it and they were making the noisiest, ugliest grindcore, people were like, that's not music, you can't do that. And they're like, fuck it, it's not music then, but we're still going to do it.
Because
right?
This is what we were saying.
Yeah, exactly. And they had like, that kind of stuff. And he's like, people don't understand your lyrics. He's like, well, I don't care. You're not supposed to. Read a lyric sheet, spend some time with it, and then you'll understand what I'm saying. But I'm not going to, change the way that I'm putting it across because it's an ugly thing that I'm talking about, right? And I get it and I like it. I think it's cool. I think that stuff's great. Love the energy of D-Beat generally. Discharge, and any band with Dis in the name, right? Dysphere, that kind of stuff. All really, really good. Love that kind of stuff. Love some of the like positive hardcore stuff out there. I think that can be really, really good. Things like Earth Crisis and Judge and things like that. Really, really good. Have Heart, obviously fantastic, very different style from us, but love the songs and the messaging and things like that. Really, really cool.
Just a note, it's going to kick us out in 10 minutes, but just rejoin afterwards, all right?
Sure.
All right, cool. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Music-wise, there's such a broad background of things that we love. From, more extreme metal stuff. We love Entombed. We love that.
You like
style,
a lot of Swedish death metal, or?
Yeah, love that sort of chainsaw sound. I think that's fantastic. Really love that HM2 kind of grindiness. So I think that's really, really cool. I think that's all really, 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 really good. Love that. At the Gates, obviously, amazing band. Thought they were really, really cool. Doing some very, very interesting stuff melodically. Dead Kennedys were an influence on us. Love both they were very funny. Joe Biafra's very funny.
Yeah, there's
He's
a bit
funny
of a
guy,
humorous
right?
element to a lot of their music.
Yeah, and like but everything about like the way he writes the songs and the lyrics that he writes and the delivery, fantastic. I think they're really, really good. And then there's some other bands in the UK that have been pretty formative on us.
Mostly death metal, I would say.
As long as you're like,
Oh, sorry. As long
as you're iconic sort of you know, your iconic sort of Black Sabbaths and things like that. Obviously, huge on us. Doom, the British punk band.
Mm-hmm. I have to get into more
we covered
punk.
some
I've only
stuff.
know a handful of punk bands and meaning to get into more punk. I only know just a bunch. I only know like 5 punk bands and just a bunch of crossover bands. But I definitely.
It's such a broad church as well. Punk, like it's because it's like to some extent it was used to like describe an attitude, and then to some extent it was used to describe a music style, and the world couldn't be more different, right? You could describe both Nails as punk, and you could also describe like
I like Nails.
the Clash as punk, and they couldn't sound more different.
But it's all about the attitude, man.
Yeah, it's a big world, right? And like and to some extent all of it's cool if you sort of give up on the genre tribalism, it can be absolutely incredible. I'm wearing a Pink Floyd shirt now, right? It was a Water shirt actually. And the political stuff that Pink Floyd were doing is fantastic, actually. Really like incisive from a different time, admittedly, because it's criticising Thatcher a lot of it, but incisive criticism of that way of thinking that has longevity.
I mean,
beyond.
I mean, there's always going to be political themes in music. I think, like, you know, you look, like, a lot of people say that, like, you know, you look at, like, political themes from songs from decades ago and they're still relevant today. Would you say that's like a lot of the music you listen to, you listen to it and you think, like, that shit's still relevant today? I think, like, the only thing that, like, you don't really hear a lot about is, like, a lot like Black Sabbath did a lot of like Cold War shit, but you don't really hear that, like, that sort of thing anymore in music, and that's not really politically relevant. But what would you say about, like, you know, Dead Kennedys talk about, you know, police brutality and all about the environmental destruction and stuff like that, well, for other bands too, like Earth Crisis?
I think so. A lot of the problems they're talking about haven't gone away, right? And that's both a critique of that of those problems, but also like the core themes they're talking about haven't gone away. I would say Britain, for example, is still very wedded to like Thatcherism and neoliberalism, right? Like sort of post-Reagan neoliberal way of thinking, where it's like everything has to make money, and if it doesn't make money, it should die, right? That's the kind of way to think about things for neoliberals, and like that, you still see that thinking in a lot of actual contemporary politics, where they're like, oh, we have to find a way to monetize healthcare, or we have to like find a way to support the private sector in managing energy. And you're like, that's crazy. You're talking crazy, but that is at the core. That is what it is, and the criticism of the policies of Thatcher and Reagan at the time is still relevant today.
Yeah. I mean,
because they're talking about the same
It's
problem.
very entrenched, but that does make me want to ask, do you think there will be a day where this stuff will, like, humanity will kind of move beyond it, or do you think it's going to stick around for a little bit? I was going to ask this later, but it's relevant now, so let's ask it now.
I think prediction is a losing game, actually, which is that you can absolutely always be wrong. Anyone who made a prediction on what 2020 would be like was wrong. Unless they were an epidemiologist. So I think that is very, very difficult to predict. Do I think power will go quietly? No. So absolutely not. Do I think do I think we will have another October Revolution style event, but in the West? Maybe. I don't know. It's really, really hard to see at this point in time. The answer to that is I just don't know. I hope so, and I actually think like a lot of our politics in utilitarian are an anarchist politics. They're anarcho-syndicalist politics, right? And so we are not really in the business of grand social design. We are in the business of everybody should be able to work that out together between them, and all power should be challenged on its right to exist.
Okay, all right, that's a succinct enough answer for me. So, do you think it's a matter of, like, I mean, let's look at like, we're gonna be, I guess we can just get started asking this because this meeting's gonna kick us out. Well, don't worry, just join back in. So it does make me ask, do you think like its social progress just in general is just sort of a matter of time, or with just some setbacks, or it's more fragile than we think it is? Because you look at, like, Europe was dominated by fascism in the 40s, but but now, like, even, like, it, like, may not an ideal state right now, but it's definitely, it moved past that sort of political phase. So what would you say as regards to gradual social progress? Do you think that can still happen, even if that doesn't fully align with what you want?
I think it's remarkably fragile. It's incredibly fragile. I think the spectre of fascism never left Europe, and I think a lot of the impulses that brought about that, because what actually happened in the 1930s through to the 1950s in Central Europe was that existing fascist tendencies that had been there for some time
Yeah, it didn't just come
were
out of nowhere.
successful. They were successful in capturing institutions of state, right? So the Nazi Party were able to get elected and then immediately, rapidly transform from an electoral system to a dictatorship very quickly. In Italy, Mussolini did the same previously. So like that, and then Franco in Spain also.
Yeah, that lasted till the
doing that.
70s, didn't
But
it?
that was like, those impulses had existed long before, and they were actually, they were sort of core beliefs on what societal structure should be like. I see fascism as a extreme right wing tendency. I think most people would agree with that. I don't really subscribe to horseshoe theory in any way, and I think that you can examine it through its understanding of like what societal hierarchy should be structured like. That's very much how they want to structure society. With like, there should be absolute power concentrated at the top, and then underneath that are, devolved powers, but then the mass below that should be pretty much powerless. And then there's other tenets of fascism that are there, but I don't think they've gone away. I think they're still here, right? You only have to look at like Front National in France, or in AfD in Germany, or any number of European fascist parties that you have. Reform in the UK is another one.
Nigel Farage might get PM.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they keep him around long enough. But the sort of energy on the far right in Britain is actually turning against Farage for not being extreme enough.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'll see, right? Like, and to give you an idea, Elon Musk is interested in personally funding Tommy Robinson as a candidate. So we shall see.
So let's just move back. Blah blah. So how did Utilitarian form? I mean, you already talked about, you were with Amara and you already kind of wanted to do this sort of project together.
Yeah, Amara and I were in an existing band right up until the end of 2019. So just about the pandemic happening, which then went on hiatus during the pandemic, and we all stayed in touch. Obviously, we're all friends, so we're all talking to each other, sort of talking about what we want to do. And some of the other members of Petrichor, which was the Doom band, went on to do different projects that they wanted to do. And I was talking about working on something faster than the stuff we were playing. So wanted to do some sort of D-beat inspired kind of, that's what I was really getting into at the time. And started writing, a few riffs for that, and some ideas of that, and then also had the sort of real intention for it to not be constrained, I guess, in any way by any desire for acceptance or success, right? I just didn't want it to be, I didn't want to be thinking, we can't say that because we'll shut out this portion of an audience. We can't do that because we'll shut out this portion of an audience. I was like, what happens if we take all of the guardrails off and we just do what we want and say exactly what we're thinking? And that kind of evolved. That kind of evolved into explicitly political songs. Our very first song was the very first single that we actually released, which was, oh God, I'm really testing myself here. Which was Unaccountable. So we released Unaccountable, which was a song. I literally had to go through the lyrics in my head. That's the name of it. Which was a song about me being mad at, and a story I told earlier actually about the sort of media environment leading up to the 2019 election, radicalising the UK. The song Unaccountable is me very, very angry at media institutions who for years, for decades, have been telling us that their sole role was to hold power to account and to be the voice in the room and to ask the difficult questions, blah, 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 and they consistently failed to do that, and had instead done the opposite. It was a bit of that, and also a bit of me at the time reading Ed Herman, Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent, which is a very, very good critique of. It's largely US-centric, but it does mention the UK in there. And it's a very incisive critique of how mass media serves the propaganda model. And so, inspired by all of that, sort of Unaccountable was born. We enjoyed doing it. We initially was just going to do an EP. And then more and more songs ended up getting written. And then we wrote the album together.
So it must have. Or go on. Oh, so like, did it really feel cathartic when you finally put that shit into song and like, you know, just belting it out the lyrics?
Yeah, I think so. And it was, if I'm honest, it was pretty exhausting. It was quite an intensive process of writing and recording, and just making sure that I was like getting it out there, but in a way that felt sharp and punchy and kind of. I never wanted to host a theory lecture. I could, right? And we could. I never wanted to like condense deep theory into into the lyrics of the songs, because I think you lose some of the punchiness, the easiness of understanding. Like if you have to do the reading before you understand the song, I failed, right? Yeah. Yeah, I was a little bit inspired by that. There's a British poet. He actually was poet laureate for a while, called Benjamin Zephaniah, anarchist British poet. And he quite famously said, this lives with me to this day, quite famously said, "I've never read Marx's Capital, but I've got the marks of capital all over my body." And I was like, that's kind of the vibe that I really like.
You want to make it, so basically you just want to make it accessible to someone who is not very familiar with all the literature and theory.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like you can't, like, and the concepts are easy enough to understand because we all live here, right? We all understand it.
You have to share the earth.
A band we got into actually around that time as well, that were pretty, around the time of us releasing the first album, we loved them. Have come a lot bigger now. They're a band called Bob Villain. And they wrote a song called "We Live Here," and we fucking loved it because it was exactly that. Theirs was a anti-racism song, but what a tune! Yeah, really good.
Yeah, that's good. All right, cool. I actually want to ask. I mean, Amara's not here, but I actually do want to ask a quick question about Toby. So he actually was looking at his Metalum page. He actually did a band, and their theme was like zombies and Half-Life. I know this is a bit of a shitpost question, but I was actually curious if you know anything about his band that he does about the game Half-Life.
I'm not sure. No, I guess the nature of as well, like, is that everyone's going to be like involved in a huge number of projects over the course of music career, and I have no idea like what a lot of the other members have done, and also who's updating Metal Archives, because they're incredibly good at it.
Yeah.
Right. It's being updated by like Warhammer 40k servitors, because it's like it is like really well maintained. They know stuff about me that I've forgotten. And like,
well, any trace of you that you left, that it's scooped up and put on there.
Yeah, any sort of music career stuff. It's crazy, but like but yeah, no. So I'm sorry, I don't know much about.
I bring that up because, like, you know, I just find it weird. Like, you know, I mean, I'm not like, you know, trying to like dunk on him or anything like that. But it's just funny, like, you know, he did this band that, like, you know, about zombies and Half-Life, and now he's doing a band that like talks about politics and you know, wanting to, you know, implement institutional changes and stuff.
Well, we had in our first album had Toby on it. Toby actually, I believe, officially transitioned this year. It's now going by Nat. but was only on that first record. We had no, sorry, it was John on our first record, and then Toby on our second. But the bass playing has been someone we've had multiple people in to do. But yeah, we did have Matt involved on.
So bass is a bit of a revolving door on that front.
Can be, and drums is as well, to be honest. Like, Amara records it for the album, but that's the other thing. I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit later on. But getting a live act together is tricky, both because the style itself can be pretty demanding, and also because there's no money in it.
No,
right?
This is purely just for. It's not like purely a labor of love. I mean, no one makes aside from like the top 1%, no one makes money off of music anymore unless you're an independent artist. But a big independent artist that is.
We are not even going to break even, right? Yeah. Like it's really, and it's not a case of like not even selling enough. Like quite early on, as a sort of principle of ours, we sort of decided that any money we make, we were just going to donate to an organisation that kind of reflected our values.
Yeah.
And so today, every single penny we've taken through Utilitarian has gone somewhere to some charity.
So some positive effects come of it. Yeah, it's not all done in vain.
No, absolutely not. And then the idea was that the live shows when we do them would also be able to serve as events where we would either raise funds for community groups or be able to do some form of political organising at the shows as well.
That's good. Actually, yeah, you mentioned. So I actually saw on your page that like you played guitar in other bands. Do you contribute any riffs, or does mostly Amaro does all the guitar stuff?
Amaro still our predominant songwriter. I do contribute riffs. I contribute ideas. Amara and I work pretty closely on the editing of songs as well, so quite often it's like, it'll be production level support, so it'll be like, I think we should go here after this part of the song, and then we should have a section that does this, or here's an idea that we had previously. And yeah, that's kind of how we do it. But by far, Amara has written most of the material. I would say 90% is hers.
So how did you become like the vocalist for the band? Did you do like any vocal work for other bands, or I think I missed that when I checked your page, or is this like the first?
So, in Petrichor, I was a guitarist and singer.
Mm-hmm. So I assume you didn't do the same type of vocals you do here, or probably a bit more like maybe not operatic. I was thinking maybe more like early Sabbath or like Count Raven or something like that.
That I would say they were really operatic. I would say like Candlemass.
Yeah. Or Solitude Aeternus.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of vibe. Yeah. In Petrichor. I also sing sort of locally in a Iron Maiden tribute band.
But which one's that called?
We're called A Up Maiden. And I sing for them. That was the show that I had last night.
Oh, okay.
Utilitarian is a project where I do probably the most harsh vocals, I would say.
Yeah.
And even by extreme metal vocals, I don't actually think they're that harsh.
Yeah.
But
well, comparatively speaking, I mean.
Yeah. Just me yelling, really.
So, like, when you do the Iron Maiden, so, like, do you, I mean, for this, you obviously do more aggressive vocals, but so, would you say you're generally more trained in, like, because, you said you did Iron Maiden, that requires, like, a very, very operatic vocals. You also said you did more with, like, your doom metal projects. So, would you say you're more trained in doing, like, cleaner vocals, or, like, harsher vocals, like, kind of like a new thing for you?
I would say clean. I've got a real strong range of clean vocals. I think the thing with a lot of harsh vocals is, and I don't want to be, because there's a lot of modern bands that are not. Well, this is not true, but like in sort of original death metal sort of style of harsh vocals, your early grindcore, that is what that vocal would sound like constantly, and it's quite atonal by design. And it doesn't leave you a lot in terms of melody or other options, whereas a clean vocal does.
Yeah.
And so, clean, and also like the style of doom metal that we were doing had a big operatic feel to it anyway, right? Where it was like you could have just a very big sound if you wanted to, with relatively basic instruments, right? I think Candlemass sound enormous, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that's Messiah's vocal, but like that's kind of the stuff that we do. I love that style of music, really do. Love doing it. And then Utilitarian was kind of a different outlet for us, where we wanted to do different stuff. And I do think that stuff probably does benefit from a extreme vocal. We did introduce some tiny bits of clean vocal on the newest album.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll do a bit more of that. Maybe we won't, but I think it's still got to have that very like forward vocal. I actually think I think the vocals on our albums sound most like Creator or Tankard.
Oh yeah, so 80s cool. Like Teutonic thrash. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You're sort of your German big three, right? Like big four. Right?
Well, Tankard isn't in the big three.
Are they not? Are they not considered part of the big four?
There's technically the Teutonic Big Four, which is Sodom, Creator, Destruction, and Tankard. But a lot of people don't like Tankard because they're too much of a gimmicky band. So it's just Sodom, Creator, and Destruction. Because the Tankard is just everyone says Tankard was proto pizza thrash.
Probably, but they are fun.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's
I'm one of the few straight edge guys who loves Tankard.
I remember when I was listening to. I actually was listening to Tankard the first time. I was like, wait, this is just an early example. This is just proto pizza thrash. And then someone's like, how can you compare Tankard to the likes of fucking Municipal Waste and Gamma Bomb? I'm like, well, I just did because that's what it is. Hey man, I'm not dunking on those bands. I'm just pointing out what I see. All right.
Yeah, I do like. They're definitely a party band.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Tankard is versatile. Was that?
I've seen Tankard a bunch of times in the sort of like last few decades, and
they play a lot in the UK.
Not really in the UK, but across Europe.
Oh, okay. So like when you're, it must have been easier. Must have been easier before Brexit. No, I hate to bring that up.
But if I'm honest, travel hasn't been that affected. You stand at a different queue at the airport.
Yeah.
The worst effects are kind of everywhere else, right? It's like
you want to come to the US.
It's hard, but weirdly enough, like if you ever want to see, I always find myself telling US citizens this. If you ever want to see what like borders on steroids look like, it's the US.
Yeah.
Good God, it's a country hard to get into and harder to get out of. Like, it's crazy. Like, the level of hostility at the border in the US is like something I've never seen anywhere else. It's crazy. Like, even after, Brexit and things like that, we're required to do extra checks.
Yeah. Do you need a visa to come here?
No, you need a visa waiver, which is a system where they make you pay, I think, $40 to not have a visa.
Well, it's just a bunch of barriers, That's just every barrier just makes things harder. All right.
Yeah, sure. I think that's the point, right? Like, it's supposed to. I don't know how much of it is posturing, because like a lot of it was in the UK, when it's like, we're going to make borders harder to cross, and then the only people who end up really getting burnt by that are like people travelling day to day.
Yeah.
No, we're doing this to prevent future security incidents, and there's more of those now for some reason.
I think hasn't the UK seen an increase in immigration ever since Brexit?
I think so, but it's weird this one, because like the people peddling the anti-immigration stuff are also dependent on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're dependent on
Labour.
They're dependent on it for cheap labour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that cheap labour wasn't coming from Europe anyway. That cheap labour was coming from like Asia mostly, and so and obviously that's completely unaffected by whatever deal we would have with Europe.
Yeah.
Because Europe was never mandating, access requirements for like India or Pakistan or anywhere else in the world that is outside of Europe. So you have this kind of insane, like, back and forth where like those political parties on the right have to both pretend that they hate foreigners and yet also absolutely are requiring them to suppress local labour.
That's hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is mankind's biggest folly. You know,
It happened in the US, right? Like, there was a big falling out between like the tech billionaire types and some of the like more hardcore racists in the MAGA movement over like Indian visas, I think.
Yeah.
Because like we need software engineers and I don't want to pay them. The tech billionaire thing. And then the sort of hardcore MAGA lot were like, no, because they're not American and we don't want them. And then they fell out about that. So.
Well,
yeah,
that's
I would imagine it's probably universal.
Yeah, well, that's how it usually goes. I mean, other countries I've heard, from what I've heard, in Germany they're not really kind to Turkish immigrants.
No, and also like broadening that out to all non-Germans, I would say. Like, and it's not a general criticism of the Germans who, by and large, are great, but like the popularity of our AfD, which is their far-right party, is growing enormously. They're like second in most elections now, and that can only happen if you've got a growing support for that. A
lot of a lot of my friends, they talk about left-leaning friends talk about how Europe is like, they don't necessarily romanticize it, but they say they kind of frame it as if it's this bastion of egalitarianism, and it does better than the U.S. in a lot of respects, but at the same time there's still racism prevalent everywhere, especially in Finland, that old statistic, it's the most racist country in Europe.
Finland's great. I was there this year, actually. Finland can be really like that. They also have a version in far right.
Yeah.
They have not too long ago, had a centre-left leader. But again, that's changing. They are getting more far right. And also, they're on... It's hard to look at contemporary right-wing European politics through the lens of the 1940s because it doesn't map well anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Things have shifted a little bit.
For example, your Finnish far right now is pro-Russian, typically, rather than anti-Russian, which it would have been in the 40s.
Yeah, that's why they fought them.
Yeah, exactly. But your contemporary far right, because obviously Finland is on the border of Russia.
Yeah.
Is pro-Russian, and they look at Russia and they're like, no, that's what we should be like. That's how that sort of hard cultural war stuff of leaning into Orthodox Christianity and the values associated with that is a far right.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Contemporary far right. Most of it, I say, because there are obviously exceptions, particularly in the US. I think there are more exceptions to this. Like, for example, you look at Nick Fuentes in the US, right?
Don't get me started on that guy.
Your 1940s racist, right? He is your old school racist because he hates the Jews, right? But a lot of your contemporary far right now in the US have moved their enemy within to Arabs and Muslims.
I think that culture war was mainly really big, right after 9/11. It doesn't seem to be as bad. I grew up during that shit, and so we were kind of framed to view not necessarily all Muslims are terrorists, but it was kind of slanted towards that way. I'm not sure how bad it was in the UK, but in the US, I kind of had that shit shoved in my throat.
As well, and it's a thing which is and I'm not saying it didn't happen here. It definitely happened here. 100% happened here. Like the views that are the way that that Islam is viewed in the US is not that different from how it's viewed in the UK. I would say, but we definitely saw it happening because it was and I was still very young when I was still 13, 14, I think, when 9/11 happened. And the fallout after it. But I still remember it really clearly, and I still remember at the time seeing a lot of things that I thought was unusual. And one of the things that I remember seeing that was very unusual was just normally when there's a war internationally, particularly a war that you're not involved in, not for the US, but for the UK, that's true, at the time, beforehand, or when there is an incident like that, it's typically fairly normal to see some analysis of what caused it, what the aggressor considers their casus belli to be, right? The reason for doing it, what they consider, to be their just cause, if you like. And then you get to, there's some dialogue about that, and usually it comes down on the side of Western values. Normally in that, it would be a, 9 times out of 10 I would say that's what comes down. Just didn't happen after 9/11. It was all, like, drum beating, patriotic, and anyone who was like, I think this might have happened because we did this and this and this, lost their jobs at your media outlets. Like, overnight, or blacklisted, weren't allowed back. In a way that I saw and was like, that does not feel
right
like the free world.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I definitely, things have definitely changed a lot since 9/11. But you talked about, Muslims being generally like the biggest target of racism in the UK. Would you say that's also like in Europe in general, or it's mostly like in the UK and other English-speaking countries?
No, I'd say that's true of all of Europe. Yeah, I would say it's true of all of Europe. I would say because it's really interesting actually to study as well, which is that it's largely the tropes that were the tropes that were considered anti-Semitic, and they still are anti-Semitic, they haven't changed, but like the things that will be thrust upon Jews in the sort of mid 1900s are now directly just translated to Muslims.
New scapegoat.
I would say. Yeah, the new scapegoat, exactly, in a way that's almost one-to-one, right? The whole kidnapping children, blood libel stuff, right? Now just moved over to a new target. It's not, and I'm sure, some people are still hitting the old target. Definitely Nick Fuentes is. I see that sort of stuff happening. But but yeah, I see that happening to Muslims across Europe. They're still being villainized. France, over a decade ago, made certain
the Charlie Hebdo
items. Yeah, around that sort of era, around the sort of Bataclan stuff. But even just before that, started to formalize like making parts of religious dress illegal. The burqa was banned, and other headscarves were banned, and things like that, and enforced. I would say specifically against Muslim women, not against white women. Yeah. For example, white women wearing a headscarf wouldn't be challenged by the gendarmerie, right? So it's the formalization of that racism, if you like, feels new. And yet, it is now interesting for me to see that because, particularly in the last 5 years, a lot of the international wealth is concentrated in sovereign Arab states.
All the oil.
They have to walk this crazy line where a lot of senior right-wing politicians in Europe and in the US are simultaneously anti-Muslim and yet also involved in considerable business deals with Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's where all the oil is. That's why we have to be friends with them.
Yeah. They've got, and also they're doing Saudi's doing central planning, right? They've got a sovereign wealth fund that is paid for by oil, and they're using that to buy power across the world through investments, right? And I tell you, if there's one thing that the right wing love more than racism, it's money. So they are absolutely on board with doing that and being funded by it. So
I just wonder, I'm not Muslim, but I get confused for often Hispanic. Sometimes I get confused for Arabic. So I wonder, how long I would last in Europe. Of course, not everyone's Europe, but I wonder if I would be targeted because a lot of my friends joke that I'll be targeted by ICE if I'm not careful. But
I don't know, man. It's a weird thing as well because I think you would probably have it slightly worse in the US. If I'm honest. Until they heard you speak. Right?
I mean, I'm in New York, so we're pretty safe here. But if I go somewhere else, I think I'd probably be looked at with a bit of suspicion.
But I think that's in Europe it wouldn't be much different to your day-to-day experience. I would say it's not. There's a lot of talk made about areas that are unsafe for people, and I have yet to see any evidence of that anywhere. Right? There's the right wing loves to talk about
crime
areas where white people can't go, and and I hear the media talk about like, oh, this is an area where it's dangerous for people to congregate. I've never seen it. I've literally never seen it, and I don't believe it. So
statistically, sorry, go on.
I believe that like you can pretty much one sort of, and this may make it into the next utilitarian album. I don't know. It's still bouncing around my head, but I'm more and more convinced that the best thing for everybody to do would be to log off
the internet
and go out.
Yeah.
And touch grass. And talk to other people.
Yeah. Too many people are just so terminally online these days, because internet's everywhere.
I deleted like most of my social media a few years ago.
Yeah.
And have not been back since. I've got a few banned accounts and things like that on.
Yeah.
I think it's advertised gigs and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't have personal accounts on websites. And for the most part, that's been a good decision. And but it does mean that I have this sort of slightly weird outside perspective, where people will talk to me about things and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Something that went on like on the internet. There's an old joke actually, like the internet used to be an escape from real life. Now real life is the escape from the internet.
Yeah, I believe it. And it's like it's crazy how much that. And I think we see its after effects in the real world, right? Whenever somebody goes and does something, and I mean like, whether it's an attempted assassination, a successful assassination, whether it's political violence of some kind in the real world, you see it, like 9 out of 10 times they dig into what caused it, and this person is incredibly online in one way or another.
Yeah. I think like 90% of, like I remember reading like, after what's his face got killed, you know who I'm talking about, Kirk. Yeah, I remember someone saying like, when you look into it, when you catch the guy, we're gonna find out the main reason why he did it. He was bored. That's gonna be the reason why.
I remember seeing like someone saying, I think it was after Charlie Kirk got shot. The analysis of that, someone was like, they're gonna find the guy's hard drive or like his computer. They're going to look at it, and this guy's going to have the most incomprehensible politics you've ever seen. And he's not going to be on the left. He's not going to be on the right. We're not going to know where he is because he's got incomprehensible politics.
His politics are memes.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and for the most part, that seems to be what I think has come out.
I mean, I haven't been paying attention to it, but I wouldn't be surprised. You'll just find like the stupidest bullshit on that hard drive.
Yeah, and I think like there's two factors to it, which is like, one, people need to log off. Right? People's brains are being pickled, right? And they need to log off. And two, like you can still go out into the real world and talk to people, and for the most part, ordinary people, and I mean people who don't really have any power, right? As we would see it as part of a system, and aren't in control of institutions, they're good. They have the right values, or at least the right, desires, and for the most part, good.
People. You will have to. Most people are not bad people, and like I wanted to say earlier, you were talking about crime. Statistically, you are extremely unlikely to be the victim of a violent crime, and if you are, it's more likely to be by someone you know rather than some complete stranger. I think it's like under 1%. In the U.S., I'm sure it's even lower in European countries. But
yeah, and also, like it's true of like so much where it's like it is people don't understand. They're not consuming information. They are watching a villain be created, right? Or they're consuming propaganda in some way, and so like when they are seeing a story of this person did a crime and they also had dark skin, right? That framing is likely intentional.
Yeah.
Right?
And paint a villain.
Entirely absent from any context and any, other facts, right? And any of the truth, right? And like, most killers, most murder victims know their killer, right? Yeah. Another thing that we also know, right? It's that kind of stuff, right? And like, it's kind of important to, I think, detach from a lot of that media previously I would have said it was largely like print and television media, but I actually think just being online 24/7 now is probably a bigger part of that. I'm so terrified of what Facebook is doing to boomers' brains.
Only reason why I have Facebook now is just so I can message bands for interviews. That's all. I do not use that shit in any other capacity.
I'm so worried, and AI will make that worse.
Oh no.
Where I'm like, where you just sort of see like 40,000 replies under a clearly AI generated image of like a kitten saving a baby from a war zone, right? And you're like, what is going on here? Guys, you need to log off. You need to go out. You need to go to the grocery store. You need to talk to another human being because this is not good for your brains.
Oh man,
it's crazy.
I actually have
parents to log off the computer. And now I'm telling my parents to log off the computer.
that actually reminds me. Oh yeah, also it might kick us out again in like 5 minutes. So I'll just know. But my boss. Oh my god. Like I don't like my coworkers. They say they have him on Facebook, and apparently like on his profile he shares like AI generated women, and I'm like, that is the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, does he think these are actually real? He's an old guy, so like he might think like, oh, these are actual women that want me to give them money, so then I will have boob pictures or something like that. I'm like, Jesus. It's not as sad as the AI girlfriend stuff.
You need to fuck off.
He's old. All right. Well, since maybe we can make this quick so we can wrap it up, because I actually have another interview not too long after this, so I don't mean to cut you off or anything like that. All right. I'm good. So, do you listen to many genres of metal, or do you mostly stick with like the stuff you do and adjacent stuff?
No, I listen to pretty much everything. I love music. I love music of almost all kinds, right? I don't mean that in a sort of empty-headed, anything with a beat way. I've got very specific opinions about music, and there are things I really like, and things I love. But almost any genre, there are some wonderful things happening in it. From electronic music to extreme metal to
everything.
Symphonic stuff, right? So yeah.
So that means my next question. So let's say you're on I love to ask this question to guys who metalheads. So like, okay, you have to bring 3 albums to a desert island, but you cannot. But there's a catch. You cannot bring anything that is either metal or metal adjacent. So you can't bring punk or hard rock, anything like that. So what 3 albums are you bringing?
So I would probably bring prog rock band Marillion. They have an album called Marbles. I really like it. I think it's very, very good. So either that or Brave. They're both very, very good albums by them. Brian Eno's Music for Airports 1, or Ambient Part 1, I would probably bring as well. Really great study of really testing the limits of what can be considered music. I think that's really good. I love it as an experiment. There's other artists in that genre, like Baskinsky's Disintegration Loops, which I think are fantastic.
Oh yeah, listen to that to fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, music you can fall asleep to. Absolutely, right? But like, and Music for Airports does exactly the same to me. Right?
And I also like Sleep Research Facility and Thomas Koner.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. But I think like when Eno did Ambient 1, it was him experimenting to see what sounds a bit like it could be music, but has no form or function in the same way that music has. There's no verse here. There's no chorus. The structure is very open. It doesn't move through chord progressions in the way you would expect it to. It doesn't follow any written rule about music other than its sound produced by some instrument, right? And because of that, and also they do it live. Yeah. They reproduce it multiple times.
You've seen it?
Which is what I've never seen it. I would love to. I would absolutely love to. And so I think those would be 2 of those, and then my third one would be probably Glitter and Doom's live album by Tom Waits, and I really love it. I think it's really, really good. I love Tom Waits. I love him as a songwriter. I think he writes, the way he describes it is he writes big weepers and grim reapers. So songs about fighting and songs that make you want to cry. I think that's really good. his voice gets more and more fucked up the older he gets,
And it
it
works
adds
better.
so much character. Yeah. And so, like, by Glitter and Doom, when it's quite late on in his career, he has got the most grim, like, he's got this, like, they call me William the Police kind of voice. Oh, that's so good, so gnarly. Really good. Love it.
All right, cool. And I do got to wrap this up though. So, what are your musical plans for the near and distant future? And you got any closing words for us, John?
Yeah, so Utilitarian are working on new material. We do not know at this moment in time whether that's going to be an EP or an album, right? We'll see when we get there. But Amara and I are working on new material. We also really want to bring Utilitarian live at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, if you're outside the UK, we will not be bringing it to you because we do not make money and we can't afford to bring it with no money. But if you're in the UK, we may have some shows that you can get to.
Closing words?
Closing words.
Because this one, we have a minute left, so we got to be here.
So closing words from us would be the same words that close our first album, which is another world is possible if you want it.
Yeah. All right. That's perfect. All right. Thank you, John. You've been amazing. This was this is probably one of the more intellectual interviews I had. Thank everyone else for watching. Everyone else, you can fuck off now. All right. I stop recording.